The wind howled outside the walls of the old stone cabin like a stray dog begging to be let in. Inside, a damp silence prevailed, broken only by the crackling fire in the fireplace and the steady breathing of two strangers, thrown together by fate in this godforsaken place. Emily woke up to a sharp gust of wind that pushed a blast of cold air through the hole in the roof. Shivering, she reached for the thin blanket, but her hand hit something hard and warm. She spun around quickly and saw the man sleeping beside her, his face sharp and unfamiliar in the flickering light of the dying fire. Panic gripped her instantly. She only remembered the piercing downpour, the slippery mountain path, and sudden darkness. And then, nothing. How had she ended up in this cabin, and next to this man? He stirred, and his eyelids slowly lifted. His eyes, deep and unreadable in the dim light, met her frightened gaze. For several long seconds, they stared silently at each other, trying to make sense of what was happening. "Where are we?" Emily finally whispered, her voice trembling. The man rubbed his forehead, trying to shake off sleepiness. "Looks like some old hunting cabin. I found it when I got lost in the woods last night. The storm caught me off guard. And I don't remember anything," Emily whispered, feeling a wave of anxiety rising in her chest again. He sat up, pulling the blanket closer, and for the first time really looked at her. She was wrapped in a large woolen throw that clearly belonged to him. Her own jacket lay crumpled in the corner. "You were unconscious when I found you." "Probably fell," he explained calmly. "I brought you here. At least there's some roof over our heads." Emily looked around the humble room. Stone walls, cracked floorboards, a simple wooden table, and two rough chairs. That was all the furniture. The air smelled of dampness, smoke, and something else, something animalistic. "Who are you?" she asked cautiously. "My name's Jack," he replied, his gaze steady and seemingly sincere. "And you?" "Emily." An awkward silence followed. The fire in the hearth was almost out, casting eerie shadows on their faces. They were alone in this remote place, their meeting born from a dangerous adventure and lost memories. Jack stood and tossed a few dry branches into the fire. The brighter flames briefly illuminated his face. Emily noticed his sharp cheekbones, strong arms, and intense, watchful eyes. There was a restrained strength about him, both magnetic and unsettling. He turned to her. "You're probably hungry. I've got some jerky and bread." "Thank you," Emily said, feeling weak. While Jack shared their modest meal, their eyes met again. This time, fear was gone from Emily's gaze, replaced by cautious curiosity. And in Jack's eyes, she noticed something else, a fleeting spark she couldn't quite read. Maybe it was just simple compassion for someone in trouble. Or maybe something more. After dinner, silence returned. Each was lost in their own thoughts. The wind outside continued to howl, sounding to Emily like a sinister whisper. She felt vulnerable and confused. The presence of this stranger both scared her and gave her a strange sense of safety in this wild, dangerous place. Jack pulled an old, worn book from his backpack and sat by the fire, his face serious and focused again. Emily watched him secretly. There was something solitary and absorbed in the way he carefully flipped through the pages. Suddenly, a sharp knock sounded at the door. Both of them startled. Who could be out here, in such a remote spot? Emily's heart began to pound wildly. A strange place, a stranger, lost memories, and now an unexpected visitor. The intrigue was just beginning. The door was old and cracked, each knock sounding threatening. Jack stood, his eyes alert. He glanced quickly at Emily, as if gauging her reaction. She felt a chill run down her spine. "Who's there?" Jack asked loudly, his voice tense. From behind the door came a muffled response, barely audible over the wind's howl. "Open up. We need help," came a desperate female voice. Jack hesitated for a moment, then cautiously opened the door. Two people stood on the threshold. Cloaked and soaked from the rain, faces scared and drawn. A man and a woman, roughly their age. "What happened?" Jack asked, letting them in. We got lost," the woman stammered. Her eyes quickly scanned the cabin before resting on Emily, who sat wrapped in the blanket by the fire. "We saw the fire and decided to ask for shelter." The man nodded in agreement. "Thank you. We're exhausted." The cabin suddenly felt cramped and noisy. The strangers shed their wet cloaks, and Emily could see them better. The woman had a pale face and wide, frightened eyes. The man was stocky, with thick brows furrowed tightly. Jack invited them to sit by the fire, and soon all four were warming themselves, exchanging sparse details about how each had ended up in this wilderness. The newcomer's story seemed somewhat confused to Emily, but she attributed it to fatigue and stress. Still, something about the man's behavior, his overly watchful glances directed at Emily from time to time, gave her an uneasy feeling. She instinctively moved closer to Jack, seeking some support in his presence. The night passed restlessly. All four slept in the same room, wrapped in the blankets available. Emily struggled to fall asleep, listening to the winds howling and the quiet movements of the new guests. Her anxiety only grew. In the morning, the storm had passed, and pale sunlight filtered through the cracks in the walls. Breakfast consisted of leftover jerky and stale bread, eaten in tense silence. Emily felt hostile looks flare between her and the new man every so often. Suddenly, the woman, who had seemed so frightened the day before, turned to Jack with a strange suggestion. "Maybe we should go together? It's safer in pairs." The man supported her, staring insistently at Jack. Emily felt a chill inside. She didn't want to be alone with these two strangers, but the thought of traveling with them also made her uneasy. Jack looked thoughtfully at them, then shifted his gaze to Emily, as if asking her opinion. She felt his silent support and dared to speak. I'm still not feeling well. Maybe I should stay here a little longer." A faint shadow of disappointment crossed the newcomers' faces. The man insisted, "But it's so remote here. How will you manage alone?" Before Emily could answer, Jack intervened. "I'll stay with Emily. I need to rest too after last night's storm." The couple exchanged tight smiles. "Well, suit yourselves," the woman said, but there was insincerity in her voice. They gathered their things and quickly left the cabin, leaving Jack and Emily alone again. As soon as the door shut behind them, the tension in the air dissipated instantly. "What was that all about?" Emily whispered, feeling relief. Jack looked thoughtfully at the door. "I didn't believe them. Their stories didn't add up." "I felt something was off too," Emily admitted. "Especially that man, his gaze." Their eyes met. In Jack's eyes, Emily saw not only caution but something else, a faint spark of curiosity seemingly aimed only at her. The atmosphere in the cabin changed again. The anxiety faded, replaced by a quiet, barely perceptible tension of a different kind. They were alone once more, and now between them arose not only a shared secret but a subtle feeling of closeness born from the danger they'd endured and mutual distrust of strangers. Jack stepped closer to Emily, and she involuntarily held her breath. "Are you sure you're well enough to stay here?" Jack asked softly, his voice gentler than before. Emily nodded, though her body still ached from the fall. But the thought of being alone with this silent, watchful man no longer seemed as frightening as before. "On the contrary, I think a few hours of rest will do me good," she replied, trying to keep her voice steady. Jack sat across from her by the fireplace. The fire flared up again, casting a warm glow on their faces. Silence settled between them once more, but this time it wasn't uncomfortable. It felt more like a quiet acknowledgement of their shared situation, their isolation from the outside world. Emily studied Jack carefully. His face, lit by the flames, seemed less stern. She noticed faint wrinkles at the corners of his eyes that appeared when he gave a barely-there smile while watching the crackling logs. His strong hands now rested calmly on his knees. There was a certain restraint about him, yet also a hidden sensuality. Her gaze involuntarily drifted lower, to his sturdy neck, barely covered by the undone top button of his plaid shirt. She quickly looked away, feeling a light blush rise to her cheeks. Something about this man, their unexpected closeness in this remote place, was starting to stir unfamiliar feelings in her. Jack lifted his head and met her eyes. There was no smile on his face, but Emily saw that same spark she had noticed before. This time it felt more aware, more personal. His gaze lingered on her face longer than simple politeness required. Suddenly he broke the silence. "You said you don't remember how you got here." Emily flinched at the deep, slightly rough tone of his voice. "No. All I remember is the rain and the darkness." "Maybe you should try to remember," Jack suggested, his eyes locked on hers. "Where were you? What were you doing?" Emily closed her eyes, trying to summon any images. Her mind was blank, only vague feelings of anxiety and cold. "Nothing," she whispered, disappointed, opening her eyes again. "It's like a black hole." Jack stayed silent, watching her intently. His gaze was so penetrating, Emily felt as if he was looking straight into her soul. A strange thrill mixed with an inexplicable desire swept over her. He leaned in slightly, and Emily caught the faint scent of his body, a mix of smoke, wool, and something musky, primal. Her heart started beating faster. "Maybe it would help if you tried to remember some details," he said almost in a whisper, his voice dropping lower still. "What were you wearing? What things did you have with you?" Emily closed her eyes again, focusing on sensations. She recalled the lightness of fabric on her skin, the smell of her perfume. And suddenly an image surfaced in her mind, a shiny silver bracelet on her wrist. She opened her eyes and looked at her hand. Her wrist was bare. "My bracelet, where is it?" she whispered, feeling anxiety surge back with renewed force. That small detail seemed important, a key to her lost memories. Jack frowned. "I didn't see anything." His eyes met hers again. This time there was no sympathy, no curiosity, only some unreadable thoughtfulness that made Emily shiver. Suddenly she realized that despite their temporary closeness, she still knew nothing about this man. Who was he? Why was he in this cabin? And could she trust him? The tension between them rose again, but this time with a different tone. To the primal anxiety was added a subtle suspicion and an unclear sexual attraction that arose despite her fear and confusion. They were alone in a remote place, connected by a shared adventure and lost memories, and a dangerous game of trust and desire was beginning to ignite between them. Emily scanned the room as if hoping to spot her bracelet in the dim light. Its absence gave her a strange feeling of loss, as if a part of her identity had vanished along with it. Jack watched her restless movements silently. His gaze was sharp, almost studying. Emily felt awkward under that intense stare and stopped, sensing her anxiety rising again. "Are you sure you didn't see it when you were carrying me here?" she asked, trying to keep calm in her voice. Jack shook his head. "I was focused on getting you here safe and sound. Didn't notice any jewelry." His answer sounded sincere, but Emily couldn't shake the feeling of unease. That small detail seemed too important to simply disappear. Silence fell again, but this time it was charged with restless anticipation. Emily felt an invisible tension growing between her and Jack. His presence, once a relief, now stirred a complicated mix of gratitude, curiosity, and faint suspicion. Trying to break the mood, Emily stood and walked to the window. Through the dirty glass, she saw the gloomy forest wrapped in morning fog. Distant bird calls sounded almost threatening here. "How far are we from civilization?" she asked, still looking at the landscape. Jack came up beside her. She felt his closeness, the warmth of his body, and her heart skipped a beat again. "I'm not sure. A few hours' walk to the nearest village if you know the way. And it seems neither of us does." His voice came so close, and Emily felt a slight tingling on her skin. She involuntarily stepped back, increasing the distance between them. Jack seemed to notice her movement, but said nothing. His gaze became piercing again, and Emily felt her face flush. "We need to do something," she finally said, trying to look away. "Just waiting here doing nothing isn't a good idea." "I agree," Jack replied. "But first we need to make sure you feel well enough to travel. And maybe try to find some landmarks." He walked over to the table and unfolded an old, yellowed map he probably found in the cabin. Emily came closer and leaned over the map next to him. Their shoulders barely touched, and the accidental contact sent a small wave through her body. The map was very old and imprecise, but they tried together to decipher the symbols, searching for any familiar points. Their heads bent close, and Emily caught the scent of his body again, which now seemed more pleasant, almost intoxicating. Their fingers accidentally touched on the paper, and that light contact sent an electric shock through Emily. She quickly pulled back her hand, and their eyes met again. In Jack's eyes, she saw something new, not just curiosity or thoughtfulness, but a faint desire mirroring her own embarrassment. The tension between them became almost tangible, thick like the morning fog outside. They stood so close their bodies nearly touched, and an unspoken invitation lingered in the air, one that could change everything between them. The sense of isolation, shared fear, and mysterious attraction created a dangerous yet thrilling atmosphere. Suddenly Jack tore his gaze away from the map and looked directly into Emily's eyes. His look was so intense she held her breath, waiting for what he would say or do. A sudden resolve awakened in Emily, as unexpected as how she found herself in this cabin. She was tired of the unknown, this tense game of glances and half-said words. Her body ached from the fall, but it also felt strangely alive, stirred by the proximity of this mysterious man. Taking a deep breath, Emily lifted her chin and looked Jack straight in the eyes for the first time without a trace of embarrassment. Her gaze held a new firmness, a determination to learn more about him, about herself, about this strange situation they were caught in. And maybe, to discover more about this strange attraction growing between them. "Jack," her voice was firm and confident, breaking the silence, "you found me unconscious. You could have left me there. But you brought me here, took care of me. For that, I'm grateful." She took another step closer, closing the distance between them almost completely. Jack didn't back away. His gaze remained steady, but Emily noticed a faint tension in his jaw. "But I don't like owing anyone," she continued, her voice lowering, almost seductive. "And I don't like not knowing what's going on." Her hand slowly rose and barely touched the sleeve of his shirt, lingering on the rough fabric. She felt his muscles tense beneath her fingers. "You say you didn't see my bracelet." Her gaze slid to his eyes, never letting go. "But you were right there beside me. You held me in your arms." She took another bold step, and now there was almost no space between their bodies. Emily felt the warmth of his body, his breath on her skin. For the first time, she noticed the distinct scent of him, the sharp aroma of forest, smoke, and something deeply masculine that made her heart beat even faster. "Maybe you just didn't pay attention," she whispered, her eyes drifting to his lips. Their faces were so close she could feel his breath on her own lips. "Or maybe you noticed something else?" Her hand slipped down from his sleeve and barely touched his cheek. She felt the light stubble under her fingertips. Jack held his breath, his eyes darkened. "What are you trying to say, Emily?" His voice was hoarse, barely audible. "I think," she whispered back, her gaze fixed on his lips, "that there's something happening between us, something more than just a random meeting in the storm." Her instincts told her that in this remote place, far from all rules and conventions, she could allow herself to be more open, more daring in her desires. She felt a courage awakening inside her, fueled by his silent presence and the barely perceptible fire she saw in his eyes. Her fingers carefully slid to the back of his neck, digging into his thick hair. She felt him shiver at her touch. "I feel it, Jack," she whispered, her voice rough with excitement. "You feel it too, don't you?" She didn't wait for an answer. Giving into impulse, Emily leaned closer and barely brushed her lips against his. It was a light, almost accidental touch, but it held all her determination and unspoken longing. Jack froze for a moment, then his hands gently rested on her waist. His gaze was still restrained, but deep in his eyes, Emily saw a burning fire that confirmed her suspicions. Their accidental meeting in this remote place was no longer accidental. A dangerous game of temptation was beginning between them, heightened by isolation and the uncertainty of their future. Emily's light touch of lips to Jack's became a spark that ignited a long smoldering flame. At first, he froze, as if not believing in her boldness, this open expression of desire. But in a moment, his restraint vanished, overwhelmed by a wave of uncontrollable passion. His hands gripped her waist tighter, pulling Emily closer until there was no space left between their bodies. His lips responded to her kiss with a greed that surprised even Emily herself. In this kiss, there was not only physical desire, but also the emotional tension accumulated during their forced time together. Emily returned his kiss with equal passion. She closed her eyes, surrendering completely to the moment. The scent of his body, the warmth of his hands on her back, the firmness of his lips on hers, all blended into a whirlwind of sensations that made her forget her lost memory, the danger, everything except this moment of closeness. Their kisses grew deeper, more demanding. Jack's hands slid over her back, tracing every curve of her body. Emily buried her fingers in his thick hair, feeling him moan softly into her mouth. Slowly, without breaking contact, they began to move as if obeying an invisible force pulling them together. They moved away from the table, their bodies constantly touching, and found themselves near an old bed covered with a coarse wool blanket. Jack pulled away carefully, his gaze clouded with desire. He looked at Emily as if seeing her for the first time, with a new intensity she had never seen before. "Are you sure?" he whispered hoarsely, his hands still holding her waist firmly. Emily said nothing. Instead, she raised her hands and gently traced the roughness of his stubble, the warmth of his skin. Her gaze settled on his lips, and again she felt an irresistible urge to touch them. She leaned in and kissed him again, this time more tenderly but no less passionately. That kiss was both a question and an answer, a declaration of her own desire and trust in this man who had become her only support in this dangerous and unknown place. Jack responded with new strength. He lifted her into his arms and carefully laid her on the bed. Emily looked up at him, her heart pounding wildly. She saw not only desire in his eyes, but also tenderness, almost reverence. Slowly, their hands began to undo buttons, loosen laces, freeing skin from clothing. Every touch was filled with trembling anticipation. In the dim light of the old cabin, their bodies merged into one, creating a new, intimate reality where only they and their growing desires existed. Emily felt his warm skin beneath her fingers, heard his quickened breath by her ear. Every touch sent a shiver through her entire body. She responded with equal greed, exploring his body, discovering new erogenous zones. Their kisses became more fiery, their moans mixed with the crackling fire in the hearth. In this remote place, cut off from the world, they found not only shelter in each other, but solace, and perhaps something much more. Their accidental encounter blossomed into an intense physical connection, filled with unspoken emotions and hidden desires. Their bodies moved together in the rhythm of primal desire. Every motion was full of impatience yet tenderness. Jack's touches were gentle but confident, exploring every curve of her body, evoking waves of unknown sensations in Emily. She responded with equal hunger, her hands roaming over his strong back and tense shoulders, feeling the power beneath his skin. The air in the cabin grew thick with their hot breath and soft moans. The scents of their bodies mixed with the aroma of old wood and smoke, creating a heady atmosphere. Emily felt her body ignite. Every cell craved his touch, his closeness. Their kisses deepened, tongues entwining in a sensual dance. Jack's hands slid to her breasts, and the gentle touches sent waves of shivers over her. She moaned against his lips, her own hands gripping him tighter, trying to close any distance between them. He broke away from her lips and began covering her face with tender kisses, moving down to her neck, her collarbones. Emily felt his hot breath on her skin, sharpening her sensitivity to the limit. Their movements grew more intense, rhythmic. Emily felt Jack's body tense over her, and this closeness sent an irresistible wave of excitement through her. She wrapped her legs around him, pulling him closer, surrendering completely to the power of her feelings. Time ceased to exist for them. There were only the two of them, their bodies, their sensations, their moans merging into one melody of passion. Every touch, every kiss felt like a discovery, a new step into exploring their sudden, unexpected intimacy. When the wave of pleasure reached its peak, Emily felt her body convulse in spasms. Her moan was swallowed by Jack's hoarse cry. A moment of absolute unity, when they became one, left a feeling of deep satisfaction and unexpected closeness. After the passion subsided a little, they lay closely pressed to each other, their bodies covered in light sweat. Silence filled the air, broken only by their steady breathing. Emily felt the warmth of Jack's body beside her, his hand on her back, giving her a strange sense of calm and safety. She opened her eyes and looked at him. His face, just moments ago distorted by passion, now seemed calm and serene. His eyes were closed, but a faint smile played on his lips. Emily gently ran her fingers through his hair. This intimate closeness changed something between them. The initial wariness disappeared, replaced by a sense of trust, closeness, even tenderness. But at the same time, a new, uneasy question stirred in her soul. What would come next? Was this night just a fleeting flash of passion, triggered by their isolation and stress? Or was it the beginning of something more, something unexpected and perhaps dangerous? After they fell asleep in each other's arms, Emily woke first. Sunlight barely filtered through the dirty cabin windows, illuminating their tangled bodies. She carefully freed herself from Jack's embrace, trying not to wake him. The closeness they had shared still lingered in the air, but along with it, an uneasy feeling stirred in Emily's heart. She remembered her lost bracelet, her amnesia, the strange behavior of the couple who came at night. Too many questions remained unanswered. Emily got up and began rummaging through her things, hoping to find at least a clue about her past. Her bag was small, and inside there was nothing but spare clothes and a few personal items. Suddenly, Emily's eyes fell on a small leather wallet she hadn't noticed before. It was tucked under her jacket. Gently taking it in her hands, she opened it. Inside were a few bills and a laminated photograph. In the photo were two smiling people hugging against the backdrop of a seaside landscape. Emily recognized herself, much younger, without a shadow of worry in her eyes. Standing next to her was a man whose face seemed familiar, yet distant and blurry, like from a long-forgotten dream. A vague feeling of loss tightened in Emily's chest. At that moment, Jack stirred and woke up. He propped himself up on his elbow and sleepily looked at Emily. "What did you find?" he asked in a hoarse voice. Emily hesitated, unsure what to say. She felt this photo was the key to her lost memories, but at the same time, she feared what she might learn. "It's a photograph," she said, not taking her eyes off the smiling face of the man beside her. Jack sat up and came closer. He peeked over her shoulder, studying the photo. His face remained expressionless, but Emily noticed his eyebrows twitch briefly. "Do you know him?" Jack asked, his voice tense. Emily shook her head. "I think so, but I can't remember his name." Suddenly, Jack's gaze sharpened and pierced through her. He stared intently at the man's face in the photo, then looked back at Emily. Something like horror flickered in his eyes. "Where did you get this photo?" His voice sounded almost accusatory. Emily raised her eyebrows in surprise. "I found it in my wallet," Why? Jack was silent for several long seconds, his eyes glued to the photo. Then he reached out and carefully took it from Emily's hands. Are you sure you don't remember this man? He asked again, his voice quieter but filled with hidden anxiety. Emily shook her head once more. No. Or, it feels like I do, but it's all a blur. Jack flipped the photo over. On the back was written just one word, Alex. The moment he said that name, a sharp headache pierced Emily's mind. Flashing fragments of images sparked in her consciousness, screams, darkness, a flash of light, the sound of a gunshot. And suddenly, her memories broke free like a dam bursting. She remembered Alex, the man she loved, brutally killed a few months ago. And with that memory came another terrifying detail. She saw the killer's face. Jack's face. Emily recoiled from him, her eyes filling with horror and disgust. It's you, she whispered, her voice trembling. You killed him. Jack froze, the photos still in his hand, his face paling. A confused, almost desperate look appeared in his eyes. Emily, it's not what you think, he tried to explain, but his voice cracked. But Emily heard nothing more. Memories flooded her anew, revealing the dreadful truth about their chance meeting in this remote place. She wasn't a victim of circumstance, but a hunter tracking her enemy. Their night of passion had turned into a deadly game where life was at stake. Emily stepped back from Jack, her eyes burning with rage and pain. Memories came back in vivid flashes. Alex's face, his last words, the cold steel in the killer's hand, and that face. The face of the man she had spent the night with. Don't come near me, Emily hissed, her voice shaking with fury. I know who you are. I remember everything. Jack stood still, the photo of Alex helpless in his hand. His face reflected a whole spectrum of emotions, shock, confusion, and finally, deep despair. Emily, listen. He started, but his voice broke again. Listen to you? Emily scoffed bitterly. You killed my love. You destroyed my life. And then you played the hero and I believed you. Tears stung her eyes, but she wiped them away, refusing to show weakness before him. She remembered the months of preparation, every detail of her plan to find and punish Alex's killer. Her amnesia was a carefully staged act, and this chance meeting in a remote place was no accident. She had hunted him down herself, using hard-earned information. Did you think I'd believe your story about being a lost tourist? Emily spat with contempt. I knew who you were from the start. I was just waiting for the right moment. Jack finally regained his composure. His face hardened again, and a cold determination appeared in his eyes. You're wrong, Emily. His voice was low and dangerous. You don't know the whole truth. I know enough. Emily cut him off. Her hand twitched toward her waistband, where she hid a small pistol under her sweater. Jack noticed the movement instantly. He threw the photo onto the bed and took a step back, putting himself between Emily and the door. Don't do anything stupid, he warned. You don't understand what you're getting into. You don't understand what you've gotten yourself into, Emily replied, drawing the pistol. The cold steel glinted in the dim cabin light. Her hand trembled, but her eyes blazed with resolve. The tension in the cabin became almost palpable. Two people, once united by passion just hours ago, now stood against each other, divided by deadly hatred and unbearable truth. Their chance meeting in this remote place had turned into a bloody showdown. Who sent you? Jack suddenly asked, his gaze suspicious. Who else knows I'm here? Emily was surprised by the question. I acted alone. No one knows where I am. Jack paused, then twisted his lips into a bitter smile. Then you're dumber than I thought, he said. You think it's that simple? You think Alex's murder was an accident? Emily frowned, not understanding his words. What do you mean? Alex, he wasn't who he claimed to be, Jack said. And I did what I had to. Shut up, Emily shouted, her finger twitching on the trigger. But before she could shoot, there was a loud knock at the door. This time it was more insistent, more urgent than before. Both froze, their deadly duel interrupted by an unexpected intrusion. Another sharp knock followed, accompanied by loud voices. "Anyone alive in there?" "We're the rescue team," a man's voice called from outside. Emily and Jack froze, their tense standoff hanging in the air. Emily still held the gun ready, though her hand trembled slightly. The rescuers' arrival was an unexpected twist that could change everything. Jack took advantage of her distraction and stepped back again, increasing the distance between them. His eyes darted around the room, searching for an escape. "What do we do?" Emily whispered, her resolve wavering for a moment. The arrival of strangers could ruin her plans. But it might also save her. "You want them to know the truth?" Jack asked quietly, his eyes drilling into hers. "You think they'll believe you?" Before Emily could answer, the door burst open and 3 men in bright rescue vests rushed into the cabin. Their faces showed relief at finding survivors. "Thank God." "We thought no one was here," one of the rescuers exclaimed, scanning the room. His gaze lingered briefly on Emily holding the pistol and on Jack standing tensely by the wall. "We've got a little problem here," Emily said uncertainly, lowering her weapon. "Are you okay?" another rescuer asked, coming closer. "Are you hurt?" Jack quickly intervened. "We're fine. Just a bit shaken after the storm." But one of the rescuers noticed Alex's photo on the bed. He picked it up and looked at it closely. "Are you looking for someone?" he asked, glancing between Emily and Jack. "Who's this?" Emily hesitated. She needed to quickly assess the new situation. Revealing the truth now was risky. Jack jumped in first. "He's an old friend. We were just reminiscing." But Emily had already made up her mind. She couldn't miss her chance again. "No," she said firmly, drawing the rescuer's attention. "He's the man who killed my love." Surprise and disbelief showed on the rescuers' faces. They shifted their gaze from Emily to Jack, who stood like a statue, pale-faced. "What are you saying?" one rescuer asked, bewildered. "His name's Jack," Emily said, pointing the pistol at him again. "He killed Alex. And I'm here to make sure justice is served." A tense silence fell. The rescuers exchanged confused looks, unsure how to respond to this unexpected revelation. Their arrival, meant to save 2 lost souls, had turned into a dangerous confrontation. Now they had to decide whom to believe and how to act. Emily's and Jack's fates depended on their choice. The tension in the cabin was almost tangible. The rescuers glanced uncertainly between Emily, who held the gun steadily, and Jack, whose face revealed a mix of shock and despair. "Wait, there's some misunderstanding here." Jack tried to intervene, raising his hands. "I didn't kill anyone." But Emily didn't take her eyes off him. "Don't lie. I remember everything. I saw you." The rescuers found themselves in a difficult spot, unsure whom to trust. One of them cautiously approached Emily. "Ma'am, please put down your weapon. We're here to help." "Help?" Emily smiled bitterly. "You've already helped, showing up just in time so he couldn't run." Suddenly, one rescuer noticed a small plastic bag on the floor near the bed. He picked it up and opened it. Inside was the same silver bracelet Emily had desperately been searching for. "Is this yours?" the rescuer asked, showing the bracelet to Emily. She nodded, her gaze flickering away from Jack for a moment. "I found it under the bed, near his stuff," the rescuer added, looking at Jack suspiciously. This small detail was decisive. The bracelet's discovery confirmed Emily's claim that Jack had been there from the start and might be involved in her amnesia. Jack went even paler. He realized the situation was turning against him. "It's a coincidence." "I didn't touch it," he protested, but his voice lacked confidence. The rescuers exchanged looks. Now they leaned toward believing Emily. "Jack, you're under arrest on suspicion of murder," one rescuer said firmly, stepping toward him. Jack didn't resist. His eyes stayed fixed on Emily's. There was no hatred in them, only deep, incomprehensible sorrow. "You never knew the truth, Emily," he whispered just before the rescuers put handcuffs on him. His last words hung in the air, filled with uncertainty. Emily watched as they let him out of the cabin, her heart torn by conflicting feelings. She had avenged Alex's death, but Jack's words planted a seed of doubt in her soul. Did she really know the whole truth? Was their chance meeting in this remote place only the beginning of a new, even more dangerous story? Outside the cabin, the sun was rising, but for Emily its light was clouded by doubt and the unsolved mystery of the last words from the man who killed her love and with whom she had shared a night of passion in this godforsaken place. The end of their story was not just revenge, but the start of a long path toward a truth that could be far more terrifying than anything she had imagined.